it said, go ahead and share it with your community. And a lot of people ask the same thing, is would they be able to access it? So if you'll share that link with me when we're finished, that will be great.
Thank you.
And we could put it on our website, our resource page, right, Am, or the link anyway to the YouTube.
Sure.
So now the village is asking for the names of all the participants. So I'm going to take a picture of the participant list. So because people aren't registering, which is fine, but they still want to be able to figure out how many people are joining these calls. So, oh, Antonia, you're a new participant. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Are you a village member?
I'm not. I have been on a lot of Sam Horn's calls last summer and worked with her.
Oh, you're a friend of Sam's. Oh,
Yes.
Okay, great. And where are you located?
I'm in Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Oh my goodness. Nice.
And Shirley Lou, it's nice to see you again.
Hi.
Hi, Shirley.
And I'm currently in Santa Rosa, California.
Oh,
All right,
wow.
Carolyn.
Maygene is here. Hi, Maygene.
Everyone, at Susan's invitation. Thank you so much.
Oh, great, great. Well, we always get started just about maybe 2 or 3 minutes after 1. So we have a few more minutes to just chat informally. You're on mute, Susan.
Yes, I know. I have a grandfather's clock that keeps chiming, so I mute myself on Zooms.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I was
Carolyn,
going to ask Sam, how would you handle it if your children live in 3 completely different parts of the country? Where would you live? How would you make that decision? Because you are my role model.
Ah, what a wonderful question. Okay, so I'm going to give a politically incorrect answer right now. All right.
Okay.
I would move closest to the family, where I think I could really have the biggest influence or impact on the kids. You know, maybe they're at a certain age, you know, maybe they're old enough to really get your leadership and your character and the way you show up, and that will shape them at a very impressionable age. So if they're 6 months, you know, to 2 years old, maybe who you are as a person, you know, Susan, is not impacting them at the level of a 10-year-old or a 14-year-old or something like that, right? So I would go closest to the family where I thought you could have the biggest impact on that family, and in particular, your grandkids.
Well, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank
What do
you.
So, and if we have a couple more minutes, you know, what would be wonderful is if each person took like 30 seconds to say, here's what I'm working on. I'm halfway through my memoir, or I have a nonfiction book or something. I know this is about memoirs, but where are you in the process? Do you have a finished manuscript? Are you pitching? Are you just thinking about it? Are you formatting your chapters? So where are people?
Sure, we can go around.
Okay, and 30 seconds each, right? So boom, boom, boom.
Right,
Mhm.
okay. Patrick, you want to start?
Could you hear the gong?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes, 30-second gong.
Don't make me hit my gong. Sam, you can see over my shoulder, there's a pile of journals up there.
Yeah.
That whole upper shelf is journals. I've spent the pandemic dating, and so I'm doing the time, the chronology, and the geography. Where was I when?
Yep.
Oh.
Okay. All right.
And
Hey,
I am in the thinking about it stage. My immediate passion / plan is to document some of the travels I've taken. I've got a wonderful collection of pictures, and I want to use a program like Mixbook or Shutterfly to tell the story and capture memories. probably for myself because there's really no family around and my dogs can't read.
Andy?
Deborah.
I'm about 75,000 words into a memoir that will probably take me another year to finish. And I'm groping through the 1970s right now. The 40s, 50s, and 60s are behind me, happily.
Excellent. Thanks, Andy.
Carol, are you there? It might be Carol Grodzins. Susan. Oh, Carol, there you are.
Hi. I'm in the thinking stage. Do I have anything interesting enough to tell?
Mhm.
Mhm. Okay, good. Shirley, what are you doing?
I'm at the same stage as Carol, thinking. I'm not sure I
Okay.
have anything interesting. If I do, it's going to be an article, not a book like Andy's.
Okay, Carolyn?
Yeah, I am making progress. While I'm here in Santa Rosa, I'm not working on it, but I'm using the blog format, and I have about 80 draft entries. So I'm making progress on it.
Nice.
Excellent. Susan?
Yes. Well, I'm thinking about, it's something I definitely want to do for my family. I don't expect it to be published, but I've had many, many, many amazing experiences in my life, and I would like to share those experiences with our children. So I'm trying to decide whether to do an oral memoir or written. And I'm also trying to recruit my husband to write with me or to tell the story with me, because we've been married so many years that our lives are kind of intertwined, not kind of, they are intertwined. And
I would say so.
he's very reluctant,
Oh,
very. So that's where I am. But it's something I most definitely will do.
good. Hi, Robin.
Hi, everybody. Robin Blum.
Sam was just asking where everybody's at in their memoirs.
Yeah. I am almost finished. I have many 45 chapters, I believe. Long chapters. And I'm just trying to wind it down. I just don't know how to end something when your life doesn't end. You know, I mean, this is a constant, it's an ongoing thing. I could keep on writing and writing and writing. And I'm also trying to figure out my demographics because it's mostly an issue about conquering a health problem, the whole book. And I don't know my demographics. You know, I don't know what I should send it out to individuals who are legally blind specifically, or everybody who has a challenge and needs to be, uplifted. So I'm just making those decisions right now.
Great. Hi, Barbara.
Yeah, hi. This group got me started again. I've written different short segments of my life in memoir type of form. My aim or goal is really, my audience is really my kids and my grandchildren. I don't expect it to be a book. I expect it to be a compilation of different stories about my life. When I write about childhood and the house I grew up in and stuff like that, I usually confer with one of my sisters to see what they remember too, because certain incidents they remember, or they'll trigger something else in me that makes me think about my cousins or my aunts and uncles and family friends and stuff like that, to share that information with other people. But I also have letters. I was in Peace Corps for 2 years. I've written some stuff about that, but also the letters that went back and forth between me and my parents at the time. I have those. I'm going to go through them and probably compile that information into one section of it also. So I'm making progress.
Great. Hi, Jean.
Hi, well, I'm actually doing something different, working on a nonfiction compilation of Civil War letters that came down in my family. So there's a lot of, it's really research based, but also a lot of writing and also a lot of questions about book publication. Not that this isn't going to be a bestseller, but there are enough relatives around that it has general interest. And so, you know, what you do with all of that.
Great. Okay, anybody else? So Karen's on.
Yeah, I'm sort of in the thinking stages. There are a couple of things inspiring me. One was that I just finished a family history. And that's sort of an antiseptic look at my background and the background of about 5 families that comprise our family. And one of the things that I learned from that it was so useful having anecdotes from other people. And I thought, you know what, that's why I need to put some of this stuff down, because maybe someday somebody will be like me and they'll be inspired to do something, and the anecdotes are very, very helpful. The other inspiration is being part of this group. The problem I see is I get my family history because we were shut down by the pandemic. And so I'm going to need something to get me going. I probably won't lock myself in the house. So that's the challenge right now.
Yeah. Okay, who else? We have Judy. Okay, how about Maria? If Maria's on, you could unmute yourself.
Judy just.
No? Okay. And Leslie's on, Leslie Bridget.
Yes, I have an interest in writing a memoir, but I don't know. I think it's mostly just for me. I'm an only child with no children, but I've had an interesting life. I've sailed across both the Atlantic and the Pacific. In the Pacific, I sailed to Asia, went to all the countries and talked to 40 schools. It was a Chris McCullough fellowship. So that was interesting to say the least. And I've also backpacked and I just done a lot of interesting things. So it may just be for me sitting in a rocking chair in an old age home for all I know. I mean, just because I've always documented my life. I come back, I'm motivated, I put pen to paper and I just write about it. So I've been collecting these little pieces for a very long time. And I think just because it's fun, I'll just put them in a book for me and add some pictures. And maybe that's all I'll do is just, creak along and read them. But it's just fun doing it. I just like writing. So that's my motivation.
Great. Well, maybe we'll get to more later, but I think at this point we should go ahead and start our formal session. We don't have that much time. Welcome everybody to the Capitol Hill Village Memoir Affinity Group Zoom call. I'm Deborah Hanlon, most of you know me, and today, along with Ann Mannheimer and Patrick Hamilton, we're going to be the hosts of the call today. I was going to introduce some of the new participants, but I think they're not really village members, but they're friends of Sam's or whatever, but welcome. And I hope you will enjoy our discussions too from the Capitol Hill Village participants. Before we get started, I'd like everybody to be on mute, please. And then I'm gonna just go ahead and ask Patrick to quickly go over the Zoom protocol. And then Susan is going to actually introduce our guest speaker, Sam Horn. Okay, Patrick, you want to just cover a couple things?
To start, I'll reiterate something that when we began, we used to speak of. This is a very informal group. The 3 of us who act as moderators only do so because we really like reading other people's memoirs. And we all know people. So this is a very informal, this is not a paid guide to writing your memoirs. This is that opportunity to sit down with a cup of coffee, which I actually have one, and to share where you are, what you're doing, the kinds of things that you're coming across with a group of people that, being Capitol Hill Village people, you already know, like, can trust. It's a great place to air these sort of things. This is being recorded today. Anne sent a note in the chat and reminded people of that. That will make it easier to share with those folks who can't be here. There is an informal structure. This group only meets twice a month, every fortnight, Thursday lunchtime. The first one of the month is generally a bit more free form, a bit built around talking to people and getting their views about something. The second one of the month is generally structured around someone who's going to offer something, an individual presentation, followed by question and answer, which is what we're doing today. Again, informality is the key. Because we are 20-some folks in one Zoom, to make it easier for everyone, I'm going to strongly encourage you use the reaction buttons. Like I just am showing, oh my God. Because if I say, oh my God, Zoom will focus in on me and it disrupts everything. So keep your oh my gods to the reaction button. The reaction section also has a raise hand. On my screen, when I do that, that moves my image, my profile to the upper left. And it means that we three moderators see that you have something you want to say. But it puts it up there nicely rather than interrupting the flow of the discussion. And we will come back to you. If you're thinking along while listening to Sam or to anybody else's response and having a thought, rather than interrupt the flow of the conversation that is everyone's participating in, use the chat. Dump your thoughts in the chat. One of us will be moderating it. When we come to the Q and answer section, we will have all of those questions already piled up and ready to go. So please feel free to be engaged, but maintaining a few Zoom protocols so that everyone gets a chance to be center field, so to speak. That make any sense? And is there anything else I'm forgetting regarding the protocols? All right. I think, Susan, you would like to do a little preparatory introduction for Sam, for those of us who don't know her.
Yes. Sam has written a book and coined a phrase, someday is not a day in the week. And that speaks so much to how she has always lived her life. She gets an idea in her head of something that's important that she wants to do, and follow through is not even the way to describe what she does. I've had the pleasure of knowing Sam personally and professionally throughout my very, very long career. And I like the term being beyond extraordinary. And there are a few people in my life that I have met that consistently not only speaks, but acts beyond extraordinary. I consider Sam a master teacher, a person who will educate, delight, and enchant you with her presentation, and is guaranteed to provide many insights for your writing, but also, most important, for your life. She has an extraordinary resume. All of you received a copy, and I don't want to go into all of the things because we'd be here about another half hour, and we want to hear from Sam. So she has said, get ready to ink it when you think it. So let's turn over the speaking, the presentations to Sam, and enjoy. I know that you're going to enjoy and benefit from every single moment. And thank you, Sam, for being with us.
Thank you, Susan. I have such fond memories of when you were president and CEO of the American Society of Association Executives. I had an opportunity to see you in action and see how universally respected you are. So when you asked me to do this, it was an instant yes. It's the least I can do to honor someone who's made such a positive difference for so many people for so many years. So let's jump in. In fact, Arthur Rubinstein said, I have found if you love life, life will love you back. I love talking books, and to help you love this session, here's what I propose. We're going to follow Richard Branson advice. Richard Branson said, time is the new money. And I think time is the new trust, so that you trust this is going to be a good use of your time. Here's my format, is that we have a little less than an hour right now. And so I have thought about all those years that I ran the Maui Writers Conference, which Writers Digest said was the best writers conference in the world. All the hundreds of people I've had an opportunity to help get their books out of their head and into the world. My own books, starting with Tung Fu 25 years ago, that is still being published in 17 languages around the world. If I had to distill it into 9 best practices, what would they be? So here's our format. 10 minutes for me, 3 best practices in 10 minutes. That's about 3 minutes an idea. Then we open it up for 10 minutes of Q&A. If we keep it to 3 minutes, we have 3 questions and answers in 10 minutes. 3 more best practices, 10 more minutes of Q&A, 3 more best practices, 10 minutes of Q&A. That way we're going to keep it interactive. Hopefully this will focus on your priorities, where you are in your work. And these are all tangible, real life ideas that I know have a proven track record of getting results. So idea number 1, and by the way, as Susan said, in 17 years of Maui Writers Conference, our best-selling authors, whether it was Mitch Albom or Frank McCourt or Nicholas Sparks or Susan Isaacs or Terry McMillan or Dave Barry, they didn't agree on anything except this. They agreed, ink it when you think it. As writers, we make a living from our mind. We leverage our lessons learned. We tell our stories so that they don't just stay up here, so they get out in the world where they can make a difference for other people. So I hope you have paper and pen in front of you. If you hear something, write it down, then it's yours forever. You can look at it a week from now, a month from now, act on it, and get ongoing value from our session. And that's one of our goals. So idea number 1 is to follow Jana Wolf's example. Idea number 1, best practice, 3 minutes, Sam, ready, go. All right, the very first year of the Maui Writers Conference, I emceed it as well as ran it. So I'm walking the beach in the morning to make sure all my intros for the day are in my head. Well, here's a woman on the beach sitting, crying. And I went over, I said, are you okay? And do you know what she said? I'm not okay. I said, what's wrong? She said, I don't know if I belong here. I said, you feel you don't belong here? She said, who am I to write? She said, I don't have a PhD. I'm not perfect. Who am I to tell other people how to live their life? You know, it seems almost arrogant. And I asked her, what do you want to write about? She and her husband, Howard, had adopted a biracial child, and he was very challenging. And she said, I went to the library, I went to the bookstore, you know, to try and find books to help. And all I found were these Pollyanna books about what a blessing it was to be an adoptive parent. She said, I want to write the book I need, I cannot find. And I said, what's an example of what you want to write about? And she thought about it and she said, I want to write about the time that Ari was 3 years old and I fixed spaghetti for dinner and I put it on the table and he reaches across the table, he grabs a handful of spaghetti and he throws it in my face. And my first thought was, my son would never have done that. And the shame that I felt that that thought had even occurred to me. And I said, what else? And she said, I want to talk about, though, even Ari is really challenging. When it's time to send pictures of Ari to his birth mother, I edit out the cute ones because I live in daily fear she's going to change her mind and want him back. And I said, Jana, when it comes to writing, the question to ask is not, am I perfect? Do I have an MBA or an MFA or a PhD? I said, you know what the question is? Would someone reading my book benefit? Because if someone reading your book will benefit, whether they maybe feel like they're not so alone, maybe they now understand the family history in a way that they didn't know before, maybe they have a shortcut to being healthier or to having a better relationship or being a better leader or being, if someone reading your book will benefit, not only do you have a right to write, you have a responsibility to write. Have you ever thought about it that way? In hearing your very short introductions, you know, there are adventurers who've sailed the world. There are people who've been in the Peace Corps. There are people who've had careers that have really made a difference. All those stories, all those lessons learned and insights, they don't do anyone any good up here. We have a right and a responsibility to get it out in the world. And it's not coming from arrogance, it's coming from service. Because we're not saying this is perfect, I know and you don't. We're saying this is an offering. I hope it might have value for you. And if that's what you have as a goal, then you have a responsibility to write, not just to write. And by the way, after our call, if you go online, look up Jana Wolf, Secret Thoughts of an Adoptive Mother. Jana's Wolf has now been selling around the world for more than 20 years. I ran into her last year when I spoke again at the Hawaii Book and Music Festival. She said, Sam, 20 years after that book is published, I still hear from someone at least once a week, someone who says, I thought I was the only one. Who out there could benefit from where you've been, what you've learned, who you've met, that could somehow brighten their day or brighten their life? Right on. All right, let's talk about the second idea. The second idea is like, it's operational. How do we do it? If we had time, I'd ask if you know who Sherry Salata is. Sherry was actually executive producer of Oprah's show for many years, and then she ran Harpo and OWN. So I'm interviewing Sherry in a conference, and in our conversation, almost as an aside, she says, well, if I ever write a book, I know what I'm going to call it. I said, what? She said, I did everything all wrong and it turned out all right. Well, boom. That's a drop the mic title. Now, that's not what our interview was about. So I moved on. However, at break, I went over, I said, tell me you're writing that book. And you know what she said? She said, Sam, I don't know where to start. You know, I mean, do I start with Oprah's birthday party at the United Center where we had Michael Jordan and Jerry Seinfeld and Chris Rock and Beyonce? I mean, do I start, you know, delivering a baby in a 7-Eleven parking lot? Where do I start? And you know this, if we don't know where to start, we don't start. So I said, Sherry, you're an executive producer. We're going to executive produce your book right now. And so guess what? Right now, if you have a piece of paper, I'm going to share to you how you can storyboard your book, because several of you were in the thinking stages. And if we're thinking about it, but we don't know where to start, we often don't start. So on your fresh piece of paper over in the left-hand corner, just put the word 200 or put the number 200. Let's presuppose your book is 200 pages. It's not a 350-page door stopper, and it's not a 75-page Who Moved My Cheese. Let's say 200 pages. All right, now put the number 10 underneath it. Let's presuppose no chapter is going to be more than 10 pages. And the reason is because this is how you create a page turner. It's intentional, it's not accidental. In fact, Dan Brown with Da Vinci Code was the first to understand the psychology of completion. If you are reading a book and you are plowing through a 30-page chapter, it feels like you're not making any progress. It's hard work. You put the book down, who knows if you come back, because it seems like you're never even finishing a chapter. So he was one of the first mainstream authors to have 3-page chapters. And at the end of every chapter, he would put foreshadowing, or he would put a tease like he opened the door and there was the last person he expected to see. How are you not going to turn the page? So just presuppose no chapter will be longer than 10 pages. So people feel they're making progress and they're more likely to keep picking up the book. So guess what? That's 20 chapters. So right now on your notes, put 4 rows of 5 boxes right now on your notes. Row horizontal 1, 5 boxes. Row number 2, 5 boxes. Row number 3, 5 boxes. Row number 4, 5 boxes. Guess what? 20 chapters. Now, since many of you are writing memoirs, you may choose to do the chapters sequentially, chronologically. You may start with 0 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, 30 to 40. Or if you've sailed around the world, you may choose to do this geographically. Here's when I was in Canada. Here's when I was in Mexico. Here's when I was in Singapore. Here's where I was in Berlin, etc. So the thing is, in the beginning, you do not start with a linear structure, because if you start with a forced structure, the mind often comes to a halt, because that's not how we create. We create like a popcorn maker. So see, with Sherry, I said, Sherry, just tell me some of your best stories. What are scenes? What were turning points? What were like big events? Well, okay, so just in one of the box, put Oprah's birthday party. And another box, put delivering a baby in a 7-Eleven parking lot. And another box, put when you decided to leave Oprah, and put yourself in your own story. And another box, talk about one of your most famous guests. And another box, talk about when Oprah brought out the wagon with 60 pounds of fat in it, etc. So for you, just go to the highlight reel, go to the turning point, go to the dark night of the soul, go to the best place that you visit, go to the most important lesson you learned, go to a relationship with someone who really mentored you, go to something devastating that happened that influenced your life. Just cherry pick the top events, the top places, the top stories, the top people. Because I bet you're going to be able to come up with 20 of those. Now, what you have done, you have already been discerning about your content, and here's why. Barbara Kingsolver, many of you are familiar with her books, Poisonwood Bible, and so forth. She said something so profound at Maui Writers Conference. Well, she said many things. 2 of them were like she couldn't wait to wake up and come downstairs to find out what her characters had to say. I bet several of you have experienced that when you immerse yourself in your book and it comes alive in your mind and you're reliving it and it takes on a life of its own. So that's one thing. Here's something else she said. She said her 5-year-old daughter had gone to a birthday party. And when her daughter came on, she said, oh, so tell me about the birthday party. And her daughter said, well, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. And she said, that's how most people write a memoir. Well, then this happened, and then we moved here, and then I got this job, and then I was fired from that job, and then I found this other job. That's not a memoir. A memoir is not necessarily chronological or sequential. It is when we ask ourselves, not just is this interesting or valuable or pivotal for me, will it be relatable or interesting or valuable to the reader? Will they say something like that happened to me? Oh, I had someone like that in my life. Oh, I've never been there, but I would love to be able to go there. And you just put me in the scene where I was able to travel there vicariously. So that's just one way to storyboard the book. And now there's lots of other steps. And I think I'm at my 10 minutes. So I need to interrupt myself at this point and now throw the ball out is that we have 10 minutes time for 3 questions. So, and you may ask whatever you would like that would be most useful to you, whether it's like a publishing path or should I co-author my book or, how can I come up with my title for my book? So ball's in your court. Who's going to be our first question, please?
I'm going to jump in and catch you up with something that we did that you just touched on.
Boom.
Because Barbara Kingsolver has written so much and in so many different formats, she as much as explains how to do it in the introduction to this, which is 12 chapters, 12 months, 1 year, each month, 1 chapter, 1 big event, and 3, 4 recollections, hers, the 2 daughters, and her husband's. So there's format, structure, but as you said, you've given out 1. Here was 1. We're starting to build a bit of a library. We're going to keep them on the resources page to where people can go back and look.
Thank you, Patrick, for bringing up the importance of an organizational structure. And our authors, they didn't agree on anything except ink it when you think it. And the second thing they did agree on was it doesn't matter what process you use as long as you have one. So see, an organizational structure, she went 12 months, right? It's like, it doesn't matter whether it's by place or whether it's by year or whether it's by person or whether it's by turning points or whether it's by, different jobs or what you did in the Peace Corps and your lessons learned. Doesn't matter what organizing structure you have as long as you have one, because that's the bones of the book, the skeleton. Now we can start fleshing it out. Thank you, Patrick, for bringing that up. Good. Someone else have a comment or a question?
This is Antonia. I always love hearing about the titles and how you always come up with such great titles for your posts and your books. And so is it something that you always have to have when you start, or is it better just to wait until you're moving through it and see what pops out?
Antonia, thank you. As you know, I wrote a whole book on how to come up with the perfect title or tagline or position. It's called Pop. And so if I were in 3 minutes just going to share like a couple of my favorite techniques, we do it starting as of right now. We start keeping our antenna up for an evocative phrase. Remember, the purpose of a title is to get people's eyebrows up. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, what's that about? It doesn't necessarily have to explain what the book is about. The goal is to intrigue people and make them want to know more. So, Tung Fu gets people's eyebrows up. So here are 2 quick stories about how people came up with titles. And by the way, I just have to say this because David Guterson was one of our favorite authors as well. And it is agreed in Hollywood that the title Snow Falling on Cedars, Snow Falling on Cedars, is one of the most beautiful, evocative titles ever given a book and a movie. And it's right out of his book. He wrote it, in passing, he stopped because the alliteration of it, the rhythm of it, the musicality of it, the lyricism of it. Do you see how, the whole book isn't about that. However, that phrase is in the book. It makes you already like the book just because it's oratory. So see, keep your antenna up for a phrase you write in your book that just resonates with you, that may intrigue people and at least help you get your foot in their door so they want to know more. Here's another example. I often ask clients who come to me, if they're a coach or a consultant or a leader, project manager, whatever, what is it people say when they come in your office? If you're a physician, if you're a CEO, what do you hear over and over again? Because that could be a title. Here's an example. Julie Jansen came to me years ago. She's a career coach. She said, Sam, all the good titles are taken. Take this job and love it. And I asked her this one question. What do your clients say when they come to you, when they hire you? And she thought about it and she said, you know what they all say? I don't know what I want, but I know it's not this. Boom. That's what we call a conversational catchphrase title. It's a zeitgeist title because, 7 steps to career success, blah, 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 blah. That looks dry. That looks like it's a lecture. It's going to be a very how-to-y book. However, when we pull out a conversational catchphrase That's often where people go, that's exactly how I feel. I just said that yesterday. That means they connect with the title, they identify with it, and it's just one way to come up with a title that could really help your book pop out of the pack because people think, that's me. Good. And time for one more question and then we'll move on. Question, comment, something you'd like to brainstorm, strategize.
Sam?
Yeah.
I wanted to comment on, I enjoyed your image about the popcorn maker as being a way to generate ideas and to approach. I'm a student of the Myers-Briggs type indicator, which you may be familiar with. And I'm a big picture thinker and not linear. So the popcorn making image about setting up the structure really appeals to me. So thank you. I don't know if you have any other comments or insight on that, but it feels more natural to me to think like a popcorn maker.
You know, and thank you, because he's going to your strength, because the critical voice kills the creative voice, right? It's that when your mind is flush, when you're running with things, our whole goal is to get it down, is to muse it so we don't lose it, is to jot those thoughts when they're hot. And if we go, no, I'm not talking about that until the last quarter of the book, then I'm here. The mind goes, forget it. I'm out of here. I'm not going to play, right? So I'll give you a quick example. It's Nell Merlino is co-founder of Take Our Daughters to Work Day, and also was a co-founder of Count Me In, which helped women business owners get to $1 million in revenue to start off with. Well, Nell's a client. She's in her third act of her life. And for the last year, we have tried to counteract her business mind, which is to be pragmatic and operational. Okay, where's this going to get published? Okay, so who are we going to get as an endorsement? All right, because first we had to create the body of work. And the body of work is for her to run. She's on a walk in Central Park and she remembers this and she just goes home and she writes furiously. And then the next day she's talking with someone in this lesson, and she writes furiously, because Robert Frost said, no tears in the writer, no tears in the reader, no joy in the writer, no joy in the reader. So good for you, Anne, because the creative process is when you are in flow, honor it, run with it. Those words will come out and they're alive on the page because they're alive in your mind. And at some point, when you have a substantive body of work, at that point, we switch gears to our left brain and we start thinking, all right, how do we clean it up? How do we organize it? Who do we pitch it to? How do we get it published? What's a date on the calendar? We do all that. However, as you just said, if we do that while we're writing, the mind says, I'm out of here. Thank you for bringing that up. All right, let's cover some more ideas and then back to you. All right, one of the best practices is how to tell a story so it comes alive. How to put people in the scene and reenact it. So you are at the Taj Mahal, or you are in this business meeting where you got the job that you always wanted, or the contract, and it feels as if readers are right there. What it feels like when you held your newborn baby, what it feels like when your daughter goes off to school, what it feels like when all of your kids are married and you're sitting at the table and your children and grandchildren and maybe grandchildren are around and you feel wealthy in what matters. How can we tell that in a way so that the reader feels they're sitting at that table with you? They are seeing the Taj Mahal at the end of that waterway, etc. Well, here's my WAVE process. Please write down WWWAVE. So especially I work with a lot of people on their TEDx talks, UN talks, South by Southwest talks. So whether you're speaking or writing, here is the way, not just to tell a story, to relive a story. So it's as if it's happening right now. I mean, all of you, you know that state you get in when you read novels And it's not hard work. You're just completely immersed in this historical fiction, you know, and you're back there with Outlanders, or you are on that battleship, or you are, you know, on the Capitol Hill in that hearing. And it is because the writer is probably using some of these techniques. So W is when and where. And now when I say when and where, I do not mean saying it was 1965. Because when we say it was 1965, we just pulled people out of the story because they're thinking, okay, where was I? Was I in high school? How old was I there? They're out of our story. So we can say something like, you know, it was 3 o'clock in the morning and I threw off the covers and I jumped out of bed. Okay, now that's a when and where. You know, it could be that you're on an airplane 30,000 feet up in the air in the middle of a cross-Atlantic flight. So when I say when and where, I mean to put us in a scene that we can see. Is this like you're playing tennis and it was 100-degree day down on Hilton Head Island and the humidity was so heavy it was like dripping off the Spanish moss? You know, it's like, so when, put us in the scene so we can see it, so we can experience it, so we feel like we're there. And where, sometimes we do need to connote the year. Sometimes, though, it is more relatable to say that you were a freshman in high school or that you were celebrating your 6th birthday, that kind of when and where, as opposed to, and then it was 2001, you know, and then it was in the fall of that year or something like that. Okay, so that's when and where, number 1 W. Next is who. And we need to describe the people involved so we can see them and we know their mood. So it's not just that someone was 5'9". It's not that someone had brown eyes. It's not that someone had long hair. No, it's like, you know, were there eyes that you could fall into? Was it that they were, you know, that they were, you know, shorter than everyone else in the room? Was it that this person came down and plopped down in your office and steam was coming out of his ears? Describe the person. Was this like a longtime employee who had worked for the organization for 20 years and was a seasoned vet? Do you see how we're explaining the people in a way that we can see them and we have some physical details? And now I'm going to ask one of my favorite questions when it comes to writing or pitching a novel or memoir. You ready? Who would play them in the movie? Who would play them in the movie? Because I've heard a lot of pitches, and what happens is someone says, well, so then this happens and this happens and this happens. That's not how you pitch. You pitch the lead character and you say, think a young Meryl Streep. You know, think an adventurous Harrison Ford, you know, in whatever one of those movies were. Think, because as soon as you pick an actor or an actress for the lead character, you are just saying 5 words. And yet now we know, is this person smart and intellectual? Are they beautiful? Are they, you know, commanding? Are they, so who would play the person in, so who is the person? And now, are they angry? Are they anxious? Are they worried? Is this person like they're exhausted because they haven't slept, you know, more than 3 hours for the last, you know, 2 weeks or something. So that's why we call them characters. It's because we care about the characters, not just when we have physical details about them, when we have emotional context to them. And by the way, quick story. Okay, 1 minute, Sam. You've probably heard of James Rollins. James Rollins was a veterinarian in Davis, California, and he was having his 40th birthday. He came home after a 12-hour day. He sat down, he's having a TV dinner on his TV tray, and Tony Robbins flipping channels, and Tony Robbins is on and says, "What's your dream?" Well, his dream was to publish thrillers, adventure books. And Tony said, if you don't get up off the couch right now and do something to put your dream in motion, it is never going to happen. James got up, went over, called his local Barnes & Noble in Davis, California, asked if they had a writer support group. They did every Tuesday, so he started going. He came to Maui Writers Conference. We had something called the Manuscript Marketplace, which was a guaranteed look by a guaranteed agent or top editor. It's unprecedented. I mean, you've been writing, you know that sometimes you go your whole life, never even meet an agent, you never even meet an editor, much less get to pitch your screenplay to Ron Howard in person, pitch your novel to the head of St. Martin's Press. So he is at the opening party, and he hears Terry Brooks, Sword of Shannara, fantasy #1 author, behind him saying that he knows who's going to win the Manuscript Marketplace. And in fact, he's going to get him a 2-book deal with his agent and his editor. And that was James Rollins. And James now has reverse engineered what it takes for readers to care about your characters. And you know what the #1 thing is? They like animals. In particular, they have a dog or a cat or a horse or something, because that's when we start liking the character. Is like most people do like animals. The second thing is they have a quirk. So look at all the series authors, whether it's Janet Ivanovich or whether it's whoever it is. Characters who lead a series often have an identifiable quirk. They drive a convertible Mustang, or they love jazz, Michael Connelly, they love Thelonious Monk and so forth, So what is a quirk you or your lead character have that makes you stand out from the crowd and likable and relatable? All right, so now I'm talking about wave. So let me finish this and then it's time for questions. So first W is where and when. Second W is who, so that we can see them and know their mood. And the next W is what was said. What was said. And I mean dialogue, comma, quotes. And if you're thinking, Sam, it's 50 years ago, I cannot remember exactly what was said. If it doesn't have dialogue, it's not a story. Because it's kind of like, and then we went to vacation and we went to Disneyland and we went to Epcot Center and we rode the rides and we saw the electrical. That's not a story. It's like when we put people, so everyone wanted to ride the Magic Mountain, but the line was 3 hours long. So we were standing in line and my youngest son said, we're going to stand in this line for 3 hours. You've got to be kidding. It's 100 degrees out here. It means we're not going to be able to. So you know what? We came up with a plan. My husband said, all right, how about we rotate in the line? So I'll stay in the line for half an hour. You guys can go play. You come out. Then mom stands in the line for half an hour. You go play, and everyone said, yeah. So do you see how in that scene, what was the actual dialogue? And by the way, I don't believe in the word disclaimer. In the beginning of the book, you can have an author's note. And the author's note says that you have taken creative license to recreate dialogue that happened 50 years ago. And that you are not saying this is verbatim what was said. What you're saying is, this is my recollection. And to the degree possible, I have put myself back in the scene and I am relating it in this book. So it feels like you're in that scene too. So you address the fact that in a way you are creating the dialogue to the best of your memory of actually what was said by who in that situation. Next, WWW, is adversity. As you know, the hero's journey, every story needs conflict or adversity, because otherwise it's just too Pollyanna. It comes across as unicorns and puppy dogs and rainbows. So, some of you were talking about health challenges, or you were talking about difficult things that you encountered along the way. If you have a foreword or an intro to your book, mention that. Mention that on the cover copy. Because if it's just like, I'm going to share where I've been and what I've learned, some people are thinking, well, la-di-da, good for you. But I can't relate to that because my life isn't picture perfect. So how will you let people know that you are going to tell the unpretty truth? And now a quick thought about that. Are you familiar with Sherry Turkle? Sherry Turkle, Turkle. Sherry is an MIT professor. She's written very important cultural phenomenon books, Alone Together, about how her students at MIT, don't even talk to each other. They just text each other. They don't know how to talk to each other. And her book, The Empathy Diaries. The Empathy Diaries is probably one of the top rated memoirs this year. Glowing reviews in New York Times. It's been a media sensation. I had an opportunity to, I've known Sherry for years. I had an opportunity to ask her a question in an author event. And I asked her the question that every memoirist deals with. You ready? I asked Sherry, what was the unpretty truth that you dared to tell? Because every memoirist has at least one thing that says that's too raw. I can't share that. That's too personal. That's too vulnerable. If I say that, so-and-so is never going to talk to me again. If I say that, I'm going to get disowned. If I say that, my career reputation is going to go down the tubes. And if they have the courage to say that, that is to the degree that the book goes viral. Because the more intimate we are, the more universal we are. We do what I call, we Brene Brown our book. Why does Brene Brown talk on vulnerability to rocket scientists at NASA? That's where I first met Brene. We were both speaking for Goddard Leadership Series. How is she talking on vulnerability to rocket scientists? It's because she goes first. She fesses up about how she, a numbers babe, a left brainer, a data cruncher, is standing in her kid's room and she's watching them sleep and she's weeping. What's that about? That doesn't make sense. That's not logical. And then she reveals that she loves them so much. She has never loved anyone so much. She can't stop worrying that something's going to go wrong. And it is when she does that, that those rocket scientists think, oh my goodness, that's me too. So what is that unpretty truth, that adversity that you are going to talk about and be honest? Because that's often where people think, you mean I'm not the only one. V is for victory. Now, in your memoir, in your book, where is the equivalent of the Wookiees dancing at the end of Star Wars? They're Ewoks. And it does not have to be a happy ending. It does not have to be a triumph. It could be that you tried to run a marathon and you failed. However, maybe what you learned is that when you stretch yourself, you like yourself better. And even if you didn't finish the marathon, it was the training for it. It was the getting back into running and getting back in shape, that's what you're grateful for. So what is the victory or the lesson learned or the epiphany you take away from it? Even if it's like, I'm sharing this so that no one ever has to go through that again. Or so that if they're going through it, hopefully they will know that other people have gone through that and survived. And then E is emotional context. At the end of this scene or this story, this is where we pull out and we often hook and hinge back to our readers with questions like, has anything ever happened like that to you? Have you ever been in that situation? Has someone said that to you? How did you respond? How did it impact you? What did you take away from that experience? And in emotional context, when we put it in perspective and how it has continued to shape our life, or if someone has experienced that, how it has shaped their life, that is where you make your book interactive. And I will admit my bias on this. I believe that memoirs are not just, here's where I've been and here's what I've done. I believe that memoirs that serve often do ask these questions, even if it's in a book club guide. Maybe it's not in the book itself, but in the book club guide, it says, here are questions you can ask. So in your book club, you can facilitate discussion of what it's like to have a dark night of the soul. You can facilitate a discussion about if we have had a loved one passed and dealt with the grief. They can have a discussion about what to do when you end up being single and not having kids, and that was never the vision you had for your life. And now you're making your story their story. And that's when I think a memoir makes a difference for everyone who reads it. Time for me to put a sock in it and turn it back over to you. So questions, comments, things you'd like to bring up. Or pushback. If I've said something you think, I'm not too sure about that. I don't know if I agree with that. I always love pushback.
I have a question.
Please.
Yes. We've heard that it helps to meditate and do other things that sort of fuel the creativity, to get to like, quiet the mind. I know I usually write when I'm all full of emotion. That's my best time, but also it is nice to clear it a little bit. So what is your thoughts on meditation or any other technique like scribbling or drawing or walking, those types of things?
I'm so glad you asked that. I believe that angels whisper to writers when we walk. I am a big, big believer in going for a walk, especially if you give your mind an assignment. It's today, I want to write about that experience, or I want to write about that person, or I want to write about the aftermath of that. So when you go for a walk, don't listen to, in my personal opinion, that day we don't listen to a podcast. We may listen to music. And by the way, Brandenburg Concertos, write it down. Brandenburg Concertos has been proven to enhance learning, enhance memory, enhance creativity. It's hard to be in a bad mood when you're listening to Brandenburg Concertos. It's upbeat music. So if we're listening to that and we're walking, as you said, our mind is like this. And boy, I hope you know about the app otter.ai. Please write it down, OTTER.ai. It is a free app you can get. And when you're on that walk, you're talking. You're in that flow state. You're flush. The words are coming so fast, your fingers could not keep up. Guess what? You get home, you have a voice transcription and you have a written transcription. A written transcription of what you just said. You just caught yourself in flow. It's there waiting for you. Now you can clean it up. Gail Sheehy was one of my clients. Gail Sheehy, you may know, wrote Passages, which the Library of Congress said was one of the most important books written in the last 50 years. Now, Gail, of course, was along with Thomas Wolfe, new journalism. And I will remember to this day when I introduced otter.ai to Gail Sheehy, and it's like she was almost crying. Why didn't they invent this 30 years ago? Because when you're interviewing someone, you're taking notes as fast as you can and you're recording it. But then when you write that article, you play the recorder, stop, play the recorder, stop, play the recorder, stop. Otter.ai free is a godsend. So what I suggest is, I understand for some people, and like we come back to whatever works for you. However, meditation for me, I much rather be swimming and thinking, walking and thinking, even on a treadmill, Stairmaster, and thinking and ottering it, because it has the energy that's just like is alive on the page, because I was alive when I was thinking it and recording it. Great question. Thank you. Good. I think we have time for one more question.
We have a question from Jean Daniels.
Good.
I'm wondering what you think about writing and rewriting. In other words, the beauty of the words and the clarity of the language, all of that.
Thank you for asking these questions. I just love them. This, I've had the privilege of doing this for myself and helping others do it now for 30 years. This is probably one of my most important epiphanies, and hopefully it resonates with you. Don't reread what you've written. Because if we reread what we've written, we will rewrite what we've written. And at the end of the month, it won't necessarily be better. It will just be different. So what I suggest is, and what Nell has been disciplining herself to do, is to produce pages. Produce. That's when you get mental momentum. That's when your voice comes out. That's when you are at your creative best, because you are not criticizing or second guessing what you're writing. So if you say, I'm going to write 5 pages today, or I'm going to write about this experience, or I'm going to finish this chapter today, when you come back tomorrow, maybe reread just a part of it just to prompt the next, what you want to say next, and then what you want to say next. Because see, then at the end of 3 months or 6 months, you have a draft manuscript. So draft, then craft. Get it written, then get it right. Because if we try to get it right while we're trying to get it written, we'll never get it written. We'll just keep reworking what we've done. And then we start questioning, well, I'm not sure if that's the right word. Well, I can say that a little bit better. And we just start spinning our writing wheel. So draft, then craft, get it written, then come back, clean it up and edit after we have our body of work. I think I have time for maybe one more best practice for me, and then I think we need to wrap it up here. So let's see, of all the ones, I think it's going to be this one. Please, of all the best practices, and I guess you can tell, I really do love this. I love talking books. One of the great joys of my life was being in the midst of that writers community. In fact, I'm going to indulge. I'm going to tell you a quick story, and then I'm going to share that last pick. So have you ever read the book or seen the TV show or the movie Friday Night Lights? So Buzz Bissinger was one of our keynote speakers. Now, I'm not talking out of school, because one of the things I did at Maui Writers Conference is I created a community, because I knew all of the people who flew in from around the world, they're in a state of anxiety. Anxiety is defined in 2 words, not knowing. In the beginning, they don't know if this is going to be worth, their money. They don't know if they're going to get interest in their manuscript. They don't know if they're going to be all alone for the next few days, or they're going to be able to turn strangers into friends. So I always both had, and right at the beginning of every conference, it was like, okay, we're going to put our schedule where our values are, and we're going to have 8 minutes where you get up and you talk with 2 people. So what are you writing about? What's the status of it? And what's one of your goals so that the group connected? And we did that with our speakers as well. So even when we had like 100 speakers, each had 60 seconds to introduce themselves. What was a current project? What did they just get in Pub Weekly or Publishers Lunch, whatever. And you're thinking, Sam, that's like an hour and 40 minutes. Yep, you're right. And I knew it was an investment in these speakers, not just being fly-by speakers, that they would really genuinely connect immediately, and we would take the tone and the feel of the conference to a whole other level. So Buzz, back to Buzz. Buzz is sitting in the front row, literally with his head in his hands. He's got his elbows on his legs. He's holding his like this. And you could tell he was thinking he was a little too cool for school, that he was doing a lot of work with Vanity Fair at that point. And it's like, really, this is like an AA meeting. My name is, and yet, he was our closing keynote speaker. So I'm headed to the auditorium. Here comes Buzz, the opposite direction. He says, Sam, he said, I'll be right there. I just need to go back to my room and get something. And he essentially delivered a Valentine to the Writers Conference audience and to writers everywhere. Because see, over the last 3 days, he had gone down to the pool and he had heard stories about book clubs that had saved their money in order to send this single mom to this conference because they believed in her manuscript and wanted to give her a chance. He heard stories on a run of and these things happened. It's like, there's a family of 5. They're over at the Ritz-Carlton over in Kapalua, and they drive what they think is to the airport, and instead they drop mom off at the writers conference, and the husband takes the kids homes and gets them in school because they're so grateful for his wife and their mom, and she's always wanted to be a writer, and they are going to give her that. And he starts hearing all these stories, and he falls in love with writing again. And he realizes what a privilege it is to write. All that writing is hard work and so forth. Please reframe that right now. Writing is a gift. It is a joy. It is a blessing. It is an opportunity. And if we have an opportunity to write about our experiences and our insights and our offerings, and it might make a difference for someone else, isn't that a privilege? So my last idea, and this is from a friend of mine named Mary Morrissey. Mary Morrissey says 6 words: hold the vision, not the circumstances. Hold the vision, not the circumstances. Please, all of you right now, put a date when your book will be ready and plan a party. As Susan knows, I used to have launch parties at the National Press Club because there's Bev K. I will always remember, love him or lose him. I will always remember Bev K, who's in her 70s. And I remember walking down the hall. You've been to the National Press Club, seeing the pictures of Muhammad Ali, seeing the pictures of like world leaders with tears streaming down her face, wishing that her parents could see her there in the halls of the National Press Club with her book getting out in the world. So whether it is a private room in your favorite restaurant, whether it is at the clubhouse at a local country club, whether it is at a meeting room of an organization, if it's not on the calendar, it's not getting done. If it's not on the calendar, it's not getting done. So pick a date on the calendar, build in a cushion for Murphy's Law. Where are you going to have your launch party? Where are you going to have printed copies that you give your children and your grandchildren, that you give your friends? And once again, it's an offering. It's not like, you know, this is perfect. This is the best book ever written. I know. No, it's simply an offering. And then, by the way, at your book launch party, have what I call an inside the author's studio. Don't just read 20 minutes from your book. No, pleasantly surprise people. Who do you really respect? Who is someone who it would mean the world for you for them to interview you about your book? And in that time, if it's 20 minutes, they ask questions like, did you have a dark night of the soul? And when were you sure you wanted to write the book? And what was the most joyous act of writing the book? And what do you hope people will get out of the book? So that right now, put a date on the calendar. That is going to be one of the most joyous events of your life. It is a pebble in the pond of your legacy. And it is your offering, and it will be an evening and an event and an experience you will always be glad you did. I've never met any authors who are sorry they wrote their book. I've only met authors who are sorry they didn't write it sooner. Right on. So back over to you, Anne and Patrick and Deborah. That's it for me. And I think we need to wrap up and honor our time, correct?
Correct. Thank you so much. Very practical, very wonderful advice. Lots of hearts and applause buttons going up from the group. Thumbs up. We appreciate it so much. Any last comments or thoughts from the group? I'll open it up for a couple of minutes.
And by the way, if people put into chat, if there was a particular idea that really was timely or relevant for you, if you put that in chat, it's always good for me to know. So maybe Sam, next time spend a little more time on that, or put that up front, or leave this out. And so I always welcome your specific feedback.
Thank you.
Well, I want to especially thank Sam for this, such an inspirational session. And I just got a text from somebody who attended this for the first time and said, Sam is really inspiring. Maybe I'll actually start writing. I especially like the app, Otter AI app. I've already downloaded it and I'm getting started. So thank you, Sam. Thank you so, so much for sharing your incredible gifts. Just incredible.
You're welcome. Susan.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Antonia Nelson has added her thanks to the chat. And I think this group also owes a tremendous thank you to Susan for bringing you to us, Sam. Thanks so much, Susan. It was just a wonderful
My
presentation.
pleasure, my pleasure.
And by the way, someone had said, should I do an oral or a written book? Both. Hey, guess what? Is that, you know, your book launch party and the book itself is that to have both a printed version, which lives on in perpetuity, and an oral version where you're reliving what it was like the first time you rode a horse, and you're reliving, you know, when you graduated from college, and you're reliving the first time you met your husband, and when you are back and you're reliving that, you know, people are getting to know you in a meaningful way with all of your, well, remember we use the word quirks, you know, your voice and the way that you, what you focus on and how you describe someone. These are one of a kind memories and gems that deserve to live on in perpetuity, orally and in writing. Once again, best wishes to you all.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to turn the session back over to Deborah to talk about what's next for our group.
Thank you so much, Sam. That was really, really inspirational. And I think you got the sense from our group, we're all over the place. So we're just thinking they need a lot of inspiration, and others have been doing this for a while. So everything you said was fantastic. So our next meeting, we're going to have, we'll have a July 8th call. And then hopefully on the 22nd, we're going to try to meet in person, maybe at the Lockwood Apartments on East Street. I don't know if any of you have been there, but they have a wonderful interior garden space that we can all meet outside. And it's really lovely. So I'm working with Capitol Hill Village to get that space for us. And hopefully you'll have plenty of time so that people can make arrangements to come there. And then we don't really have any upcoming guest speakers at the moment, but if you have any ideas or thoughts or hear of any classes or training or anything you'd like to share with the group, please let us know. So with that, as I said, the next meeting will be on the 8th, and then the one on the 22nd, I hope to have in person. So does anybody have any questions or thoughts? We have about 10 more minutes. If you want to talk about maybe what you've learned or gotten from this session, I thought it was really fantastic. And I really love just write and don't be so critical of your own writing. Just get it down on paper. And because it's true, when I just wrote my brother's obituary, and I swear I wrote it like 5 times, and every time it was different. It wasn't better, it was different. And then I had other people write and say, and everybody said, well, everybody's going to write it differently. But in the end, it came out, you know, very, very nice. But if you just start rereading and rereading and rewriting, you just can go on forever. So I thought that was really pretty inspirational.
You know, I also was very intrigued, and it just hit my hot button about the question, the critical voice kills creativity, as you just said, Deborah. And so often we have this self-talk that never goes away. And I think it would be helpful, I'd have to think it through a little, but to have a session on how to let your mind go free and not put up these critical roadblocks like, oh, that's gonna, who would ever care about that? Or that's just not worth telling, or that's shallow, or I don't know, just a whole lot of things like that that go through your voice. They certainly go through mine.
Yeah.
And it stops the process.